Thank you, sir, for such a nice talk. It was put in a very simple way. So, without any waste, we'll go ahead with the panel discussion. So, I've introduced you my panel already. This breast cancer awareness month campaign this started from 1985 itself, and they've been doing a very good work. The theme for this year is early detection saves lives. So for this theme, what I'm planning is we'll discuss about breast cancer mainly to create awareness. So we'll discuss causes and risk factors. Screening, I think Dr. Sandeep has covered most of it in a very good way, and a little about symptoms. So firstly, Dr. Sandeep, the most basic question what patients ask me is, sir, what is cancer? So just elaborate a bit about what is cancer.
Shrikant, thanks. When in any any system to survive, an order is very important. An order in a system. If there is no order, everything fails. So even in our body, for normalcy to exist, all the cells in our body should follow a systematic way of division, how they divide, how they maintain their life, how they finally die. So each cells, there is a circulation that happens, and the problem when one of the cells or one group of cells say no, I will not follow the order in the system, that is when the cancer starts. So it's basically a revolt against the homeostasis or your body's system. So one cell says, I'm not going to be a follower, I'm going to revolt against your body, and that is when cancer starts. It's basically uncontrolled division of cells. That is cancer.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So with this insight, I will just give you an explanation what is breast cancer. So if you see the anatomy of the breast is mainly made up of two things. One is the mammary tissue, from there the milk is secreted, and the ducts which carries this milk from the mammary tissue to the nipple areola complex. Apart from this, most of it is made up of fatty and connective tissues. So nearly 80 to 95% of the cancers, they arise either from the ducts or from the lobules. So most of the cancers are seen here. So what we are trying to do by creating awareness is, in the picture what you're seeing here, this is ductal carcinoma in situ. It means the carcinoma is just at the initial stage. It's not crossed its boundaries. When it is in this initial stage, it cannot spread to anywhere else in the body. So by doing screening with mammography and all, we can identify cancers in this pre-malignant stage. This is called as something like a stage 0 cancer. So that is the importance. That's why we want to create awareness, and that's the importance of doing screening to identify cancers in stage 0. And after this, the main thing, Dr. Suresh Babu sir, I find a little difference between the things which we read in the textbooks, which is most of a Western data, and the patients which we see in the OPDs, the Indian patients. So, what difference do you see between Indian breast cancer patients and other parts of the world?
I think Dr. Sandeep did touch this point. One of the things major is that the breast cancer incidence in our country happens in a little bit earlier age compared to the Western population. So we do have almost a decade breast cancer incidence little bit earlier than that of the whatever the Western population is there. And the second most important thing is that most of our breast cancer are advanced or metastatic. If you see the early breast cancer is somewhere less than 20% or so, majority 70 to 80% of the people do come with a very advanced stage in stage 3 and stage 4. That makes very difficult for the Indian doctors to treat, basically because when you come in advanced stage, the chance of you getting cure rate is very going to be less. So this is one of the biggest difference which we have seen, the occurrence in a little bit higher stage and also presenting in a little bit earlier age. That is the major difference what we have seen between Indian and other parts of the world.
Yes, sir. As you said, breast cancer is the most commonest breast cancer in females. Nearly when more than 25% of cancers among females are breast cancers. And apart from this, I would like to add this point that the biology of Indian cancer patients is different from what we see in Western countries. And apart from this, if you see, the main drawbacks for screening, what I feel is lack of awareness is one thing, and we don't have rampant screening facilities. For example, if a patient comes to a healthcare checkup and do an annual investigation, we need to emphasize more on regular screening of breast cancers as well. And the most important thing, what we Indians also have, is the social stigma. If we have a problem for some personal parts, then we try to delay going and visiting a doctor. So these are the important barriers. So because of this, nearly 60% of cases what we are seeing are in advanced stages, and which is resulting into a poor outcomes. So if we tackle the barriers, that is creating more awareness, more screening, and reduce the social stigma, I think we can do a lot of improvement. Dr. Sandeep, most of the times we see in our OPD is the most common presentation by the patient will be a breast lump. And the first question they ask is, Doctor, is it cancerous? So what is your opinion? How many of these diseases are cancerous?
See, most of the breast lumps are benign lumps. So, but the more important question in this is that, can we ignore it? We cannot. So, though most of the lumps which in the breast are benign, all of them need to be investigated thoroughly before we conclude that, okay, this is safe, this is not safe. So what is the importance of, what are the things which have to be done? In fact, there are three things which are very important in this process: the doctor's opinion, that is doctor's examination, a scanning, an ultrasound scan or sonomammography or a mammography, and the third thing which is important is an cell testing, that is FNAC. But at the end of this, we prove or disprove that it is cancer. Now our dictum, which always in medical courses and everywhere the students are taught, is that breast lump is cancer unless proved otherwise. I think most of our patients also believe the same. So I think it is reasonable belief to have, otherwise we will end up missing a lot of cases.
So as sir highlighted, all the participants should understand one important thing. Only 20% of the lumps which we generally see in our OPDs are cancerous, and nearly 80% of them are non-malignant. The problem mainly what we see is the symptoms of both non-cancerous and cancerous diseases almost overlap a lot. That's why they have this confusion. So as Dr. Sandeep said, triple breast assessment is very important. The examination by doctor, imaging in the form of ultrasound or mammogram, and a pathological test by FNAC or biopsy. And
Shrikant, can I just come in for a moment?
Yes, sir.
See, in cancer, very often people ask this question, and I wanted to answer this in this forum. See, people will say, I have this, is it a symptom of cancer? A very common question which I get. I'm not talking about only breast. I have this symptom, is this symptom of cancer? Actually, if you see any cancer, the symptom of cancer, there is no specific symptom of cancer. The symptom is actually of the organ that is involved. So if it's a breast lump is the symptom. That is not related to the cancer or not cancer. If it is stomach, it is stomach related, something like gastritis. So it is not related to cancer. It is related to the organ that is involved. That is very important.
Yes, sir, true. So there was a small survey conducted by a pharmaceutical company, and they asked the patient parties like, what do you think is the cause and risk factor for breast cancer? Suresh Babu, sir, can you enlighten our participants about, in a brief, the causes or risk factors for cancer?
No, in the breast cancer, there is something called as, modifiable and non-modifiable. Non-modifiable, I mean that you can't do much about it. A modifiable is something which you can do about it. Then one of the major risk factors for non-modifiable breast cancer is, one is the sex itself, because the breast cancer is more common in females compared to males, though there are very, very rare chances of male getting a breast cancer. Second thing is the age. As long as the age goes, and there is a very high chance of developing a breast cancer. Third one is the family history. If any of your first degree relatives like mother, sister, any one of them had a breast cancer, especially if they are at a very young age, then they are more likely to develop breast cancer. Menstruation at onset at early age and developing menopause at very later age is one of the risk factors which is known. And also nulliparity, if you don't have any children or anything, nulliparity is one of the risks for the breast cancer. Other one is the breastfeeding. If you have any no history of any breastfeeding, then you are more likely to have breast cancer. Other one is previous breast biopsy. The main thing about previous breast biopsy is that not all the patient who has undergone breast biopsy should be worried. When you have a breast biopsy for whatever reason, with the histopathology report, you have to go and discuss with the oncologist or concerned doctor regarding what is the exact history or risk of mine developing breast cancer, because there are only certain diseases in the breast cancer which are pre-malignant. Not all the cancers or all the lesions which are in the breast are malignant. The risk which you can modify is obesity. Obesity is always the scientific term. It is called as our basically the the if the patient is obese in a premenopausal age, then there is a literature evidence that it can be a preventive in a premenopausal patients. Obese in a postmenopausal, there is evidence that it can be a high risk factor for the development of the breast cancer. Contraceptive and hormonal therapy, the thing is that previous hormonal therapy and contraceptives had only estrogen. Now we have a combination of contraceptive therapy. The risk is very less. If they are using more than 3 years, then only the risk is more. Otherwise,
Sir,
risk is less.
if you allow me to interrupt, shall we discuss all these risk factors individually?
Yeah, we can discuss in later. I think these are all the some of the risk factor. This can be a modifiable and non-modifiable risk factor.
Non-modified. So your interpretation was same like me, sir. You put it in a very simple manner. So whenever patient asks, we have only answers for 25% of them that we know the cause. 75% of the cancers we don't have the answers. And as sir has put, we have control only on some of the risk factors, not all. And some patients will come and ask, doctor, uh, I don't have any risk factors, so I don't get any cancer. It's not like that. 60% of breast cancer patients will not have any kind of risk factors, but still they can develop a breast cancer. Dr. Sandeep, it's as you are saying, is breast cancer a disease only for old people? Can't youngsters get that?
See, the incidence as the person approaches or crosses menopause, the incidence of breast cancer increases. There's no doubt about that. But it is not exclusive to the older people. It can happen in younger people also. We have seen it in fact, some patients we have seen in teenagers also. We have seen 25 years, in fact 18 years also sometimes. We have seen patients in very young age who get breast cancer. It's not exclusive, but you have to that's why they have everyone, anybody above the age of 20 has to do breast self-examination. That is very important.
Thank you, sir. So, as sir said, India is having a very younger generation of population, and as the data also suggests, we are seeing more younger and younger females who are presenting with breast lumps. I'm sure both Dr. Sandeep and Dr. Suresh Babu might be seeing more younger generation in teenage presenting with breast cancers. That's because we are having a very young population. And coming to the next question, Suresh Babu sir, you were saying about menarche and all. How is, and even the survey has told that hormones are the most important cause for breast cancer. So can you enlighten us how all these risk factors are related to breast cancer?
So that's what I think we were discussing about this. Majorly, thing is that if you expose to more of a estrogen, then you are more likely to develop cancer. That is what the simple way you can put. That if you have early menopause and early menarche and late menopause, the duration of you exposing to that hormonal period is much more. So you are more likely to develop breast cancer. Other thing is that when you become pregnant or anything, that time you will have more amenorrhea, that will give a protection for you regarding development of breast cancer. Even during the breastfeeding, that will prolong your amenorrheic period, so that the breastfeeding is also known to develop, give protection to breast cancer. Oral contraceptives, as I was telling you, previous and older oral contraceptives did carry some risk for breast cancer, but new generation oral contraceptives, the chance of breast cancer is very, very less. However, we must be very, very careful in using the hormonal therapy, even during a postmenopausal time. Usually, if you start using that hormonal replacement therapy for more than 3 years, then it is considered to be a really risk factor for developing breast cancer. So, when you are in a hormonal therapy or when you are on oral contraceptive, always keep these things in mind and go and check with a doctor regularly regarding the risk of breast cancer. That is what the thing I will say for hormone and breast cancer.
So the basic answer, the gist what the participants should understand is the hormones secreted by the ovaries and the exposure of breast to the hormones. These are interrelated. The more the exposure, the more the chances. So that's how breast cancer is related to the hormones. And if the exposure is less by the form of pregnancy or breastfeeding, the risk will come down. So sir has answered this question as well. So the breastfeeding, it reduces the risk compared to the woman who has never breastfed, and it also delays breast cancer in individuals who have genetic risk. And it also has a cumulative effect. I want to add this point. That is, the more you breastfeed, even in the first pregnancy or second pregnancy, that adds more to the benefit of the patient by reducing the hormone exposure and reduces the risk of breast cancer. Uh, Sir, can you enlighten us about previous breast biopsies? Dr. Suresh Babu, you're talking about this.
Yeah. Previous breast biopsy, there is something called as proliferative and non-proliferative, breast biopsies. All breast biopsies is not a, or breast lesions is not a, reason for you to be worried that they need to get into breast cancer or anything. So usually proliferative, and if they show some form of ATP before, those are the pre-malignant conditions which you need proper follow-up. So I will not get into that, pathology, what lesion you have to be worried and all, because that's not the concern of a public. So when you have a real pathology report, I suggest you to, you go and meet a concerned doctor or oncologist, then discuss the report rather than getting into all the breast biopsy to be worried. So when you have a breast biopsy or anything before, you with the report, you go to oncologist and you have a session, discuss about it. That's the way to go. But the point is that you need not worry that all breast lesions are malignant. You have to be, there are some certain significant lesions which you need to be careful of. That can be sorted out once you discuss with the doctor. That's what I will say.
Yes, sir. As you said, non-proliferative diseases and proliferative diseases. Again, in proliferation, we have without atypia and with atypia. If non-proliferative disease is there, it doesn't add anything much to your risk. But if it is a proliferative disease with atypia, the relative risk goes up by 1.5 to 2%, and with atypia, it goes by 4 to 5%. A doctor will be, when if you have the report as sir said, if you approach the consultant, he will explain you better on that. Dr. Sandeep, one of our participants also requested this question. Are men safe? Won't men get any breast cancer?
Men can get breast cancer, but the risk is very low. So, it is, male breast cancer constitutes about 1% of breast cancers. So, it's very, very low. And it is very easy to diagnose also. It is very visibly there, because any breast nodule in a male has to be investigated. So, and it's very easy. You can, there is no specific examination technique required. You can self-examine and find. There's no screening required because the incidence is very low. But if you notice something, any man who notices any lump in the breast should immediately evaluate it, because having said that, it is rare, but whenever it occurs, it's, as there is very little tissue between the breast and the chest and all that, it tends to grow faster and infiltrate into the chest and all that much faster. So the time for you to come for medical help is shorter. So it is always advisable to take medical help the moment you suspect that there is something. And also very important, these things, in men, it is older men predominantly who get breast cancer. You'd never see a very young person coming with breast cancer.
Yes, sir.
Right?
So,
Okay.
as you pointed out, men, most of them are not aware that even they can get breast cancer. But older age people can get, and in a more aggressive form compared to that of females. The main risk factors which I would like to point out for men is exposure to radiation. If you have received any kind of radiation therapy, and if you have a strong family history of breast cancer, like either your mom, your sisters, and all, then if you have any genetic mutations, then you are more prone for getting a cancer, breast cancer. And the third month of October, though the entire October month is for breast cancer, the third week of October is specially dedicated to create awareness about male breast cancer. So I think we should create more awareness in this. And the important question others have is, if I have a breast cancer, can my daughter get it too? Ms. Meghna, can you enlighten us about the family history and hereditary factors of breast cancer?
Yes. So good morning, everyone. That's the main question, isn't it? Every time anybody is diagnosed with breast cancer, the first question that pops up in their mind is if they would transmit it to their children. And that concern is very legit. To answer this, yes, there are several factors that underlie whether they would transmit it to their children. That depends on the kind of breast cancer and the type of mutation underlying this breast cancer. Like you've already said that a major portion of breast cancer cases that we've identified, we have no known cause for them. So in these cases, we may not be very sure of whether this could be transmitted, but in cases where there are hereditary breast cancer cases, in these times, there are a faulty genes that we know could be transmitted to the next generation. In these cases, we could say that every male or a female with such a faulty gene has 50% chance of transmitting it to the next generation. Whether this would manifest in the next generation is something that would depend on the kind of mutation that has been transmitted. Could you just go to the next slide, please?
So, as Meghna was telling, we have answers only for 20% of breast cancers, and these are the common mutations which we are seeing. And apart from that, most of them doesn't have any cancers. And the most important mutations which we have are BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations. And if a person is carrying this mutation also, it doesn't mean that all her offsprings need to get it. This gene will be carried only into 50% of the offsprings. And what is this BRCA gene means? These genes are present in everyone, and it undergoes mutation only in some people. And the function of this BRCA gene is, if there is any DNA damage, it tries to suppress the damage and it tries to correct the damage. If that correction is not done, such people can develop a cancer. So there are two types of BRCA mutations, the BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations. If it is a BRCA1, 50 to 65% of patients, people with that mutation have they have 50 to 65% of risk to get a breast or ovarian cancer. And if it is a BRCA2, the less aggressive variant, you have 45% chances to develop a breast or ovarian cancer. And Meghna, what kind of genetic test do you recommend to these patients? And should everybody undergo this test?
What kind of genetic tests? There are basically genetic tests are considered under two categories. One would be somatic and one would be germline or hereditary. When we think that there is no family history of any kind, a strong family history. In that case, we would say that we would look at the tumor of the tumor testing would be done of the patient who has been diagnosed with breast cancer, and others would be when you have a strong family history. When you say family history, it would mean that if there are two or more people in the family who have had been diagnosed with breast cancer already, or if there's a family member who's been diagnosed at a very young age, let's say about 35 years or lower, if you've had a bilateral breast cancer, or if there's a male in the family who has been diagnosed with breast cancer. In these conditions, we would say you should consult a genetic counselor and understand your situation. A genetic counselor would explain to you what your current scenario is, consider all the parameters of the case, and then suggest the best genetic test that would work best for you, and you can make a decision of what would work best for you and your family, and you can undergo tests accordingly in consultation with your oncologist and a genetic counselor.
Thank you. So, as Meghna said, earlier we used to do only BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations, but now we have identified a lot other related genes which can also cause breast cancers. So, with just drawing a blood sample, they can do testing for all these genetic mutations and they can identify. So, people who are eligible is if multiple family members with breast or ovarian cancers, or if you find breast cancer at a younger age group, like less than 40 years, and having a bilateral breast cancer or men with breast cancer, in all these people you can consider for a genetic testing. It's not required for every breast cancer patient. And so far we have discussed all the risk factors which we can't make any difference. So let's talk about the things which we can make some change. Let's worry about the things which we can change. So Pinkathon has been creating a lot of awareness, and we are happy to have a Pinkathon ambassador with us. So Swati, can you share your experience with Pinkathon and how you became a fitness role model for everyone?
Hello everyone. So my personal fitness journey started with Pinkathon about 5 years back, and the whole idea of Pinkathon in general is to raise awareness, to create awareness about breast cancer, and instill the importance of fitness and daily exercise in women. Because many a times I think what happens is, especially with women, they're given to understand that, if you're doing the household chores, if you're taking care of your children and you're leading a healthy lifestyle, you don't need to do anything with respect to exercise. I think that is where the mindset needs to change. That, and what Mr. Milind Soman told me is that nobody is that busy that they can't take out 30 minutes of their time every single day for some form of exercise. So for me, I enjoy running, but for so many others, there might be many other forms of exercise and fitness that they would like to do on a regular basis. And also for all the women that participate in Pinkathon, for every woman who is over the age of 40, we give them a free mammogram at which they can avail of after they participate in the event. So that that's ensuring that that rules out any possibilities of breast cancer in them.
That's a very nice initiative, Swati, and you all are like an inspiration for all the young women to take part in fitness. So Steve Jobs, who expired because of cancer, he said that you can have replacement for anything. For your job, you have a replacement. If you want a driver, you can hire someone. But if you want to be fit, you have to do it. Nobody can share your suffering. So two important things which I would like to point out here is staying fit and having a healthy diet. Some people also have questions regarding diet. Are there any risk factors? There are no strong evidence to say that this diet causes cancer, though it's advised to avoid fatty diet and other things, because that can indirectly lead into obesity, which can cause breast cancer. How obesity causes is post menopause, though the ovaries doesn't secrete any hormones, the peripheral fat, whichever is present, that can synthesize a little amount of estrogen and all, which will increase the exposure of breast. So that's how obesity is related to breast cancer. So stay fit and have a healthy diet. That's an important thing. And coming to the next important uh, risk factor, there is a change in trend of smoking and alcohol. We have Dr. Arunima here. She is a tobacco cessation specialist. So, Dr. Arunima, can you enlighten us with the change in trend which we are seeing and the role of cessation centers in creating awareness and quitting this bad habit?
Sure. Am I audible properly?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. First of all, thank you for this such a very eye-opening and informative session by all the doctors. So now if we come to smoking, if we go on figures by the Gates 1 and Gates 2 survey, yeah, there is a drastic change by 6 percentage points in the smoking habit in people. But the problem is that all these changes which are happening is only in the urban people which are educated, in which there is awareness. But still, the affordability of that bidi gudka, which is just 4 rupees per packet, is making it so common in youngsters starting from 15 years of age, and rural people where there is no awareness. It's still a very common problem, and that there's no improvement in the rural people. And the other very common issue, which I would say, that the self-quit rate is still at 4%. There is no improvement in the self-quit rate, because nicotine is so addictive substance that even if someone is using it just for a few weeks, it is causing so many withdrawal symptoms once the person try to quit it, that it is getting very difficult for a person to quit it just by individually. So as a tobacco cessation specialist and now we are trying to have a well-equipped tobacco cessation center. We are equipped so well that whatever roadblocks the person is going to face in the journey to quit tobacco, we are going to give a 360-degree care. Like a very common example, I like to use it. Some people have that mindset that they'll have constipation after quitting tobacco. For us, it is just a laxative which we are going to prescribe and the problem is solved. But for an individual just sitting at home and trying to do that, that can be a roadblock and he or she can shift back to having tobacco. Some people have a habit of that I'm going to have weight gain after quitting tobacco. Yeah, there is a problem because serotonin and dopamine reduce the hunger ability when person is using nicotine. As soon as the person quit tobacco, the hunger increase and thus the weight increase. So we have a counseling with the dietitian in which we can give healthy substitutes. We can help in dealing with all the withdrawal symptoms. And nowadays the pharmacotherapy is so good that the quit rate have really gone very high. So I would advise if someone is really looking for quitting, you need help, better go for some specialist, better go to a center, and the journey is going to be very smooth.
Yeah, thank you. So, as you pointed, the two important things is pharmacotherapy is one, and by help of a tobacco cessation counselor, it's far easier to quit all the either smoking or alcohol habits. So, the other question, important thing, Swati, do you think social media is creating a good awareness about cancer?
Absolutely, at least with respect to the idea of people now being more aware and people being more open to understanding that each and every person could be a victim to this and how they could, do their bit in probably protecting themselves or safeguarding themselves and what's their role to play in case they find something wrong with their bodies. Also with I would like to add to the fitness bit. So when this pandemic came upon all of us, I think with most of us being able to bring our work home and to be able to compromise on the eating out, and we started baking and cooking and doing all sorts of things at home. But I think for people who were so used to exercise, with the gyms being shut and with us locked up in our homes, we did not have an outlet. I think that's when social media played a very, very important role by bringing the exercise modules right into our phones.
Yeah. So,
Especially with, sorry?
yeah, come on.
No, I was saying, especially the crew that I work out with, the Bombay Running crew. So they have been doing 100-day workouts, strength training program right from day one of the lockdown till day 100. And all these sessions were absolutely free for anybody to join. And in fact, all these sessions are saved on their page later, so that anybody who wants to actually, avail of these workouts and do their bit at home, they can do that. Because especially with women, we tend to get busy with families and homes and children and handling work and all of that. So I think this conscious me time is very important.
Maybe our participants can follow the Bombay Running Group and become more active.
Yeah, sure.
The important point I would like to point in this question is there is not only the good information patients get, they also get a lot of wrong information on social media. So I advise all the participants to be aware on where you should look for the proper information. That is the key point you should take here. And so we discussed all the risk factors. Coming to screening, I think Dr. Sandeep covered most of the things, so I'll just rush on because of the time. The most important three aspects for screening is self-breast examination, clinical breast examination, and mammogram. Dr. Sandeep, do you think all patients with all the risks should be treated in the same way, or should we screen differently for average risk and high risk individuals?
See, now whatever I initially discussed was all about average risk. When we talk about average risk, means a common man, everybody who is, in the population. But there are people whom you discussed earlier. That is the group with genetic mutations who have some genetic baggage that they are already carrying, like what we call as BRCA gene, BRCA1-2 gene. Like one of the examples was Angelina Jolie. So such people are different from normal individuals, so they need to be screened in a different way. There are other people also where BRCA gene is not seen, you have listed over here, but higher risk group, So all those people need a different strategy, but I don't think this is a forum to really discuss that in detail, but we
Yes.
strategize based on what the risk is, because it could be a surgery, it could be just a screening that we do with MRI. There are many ways to think about it, but it has to be personalized. We cannot really generalize those things. So what
Yes.
we are discussing over here is general thing.
Okay, sir. So, so you highlighted the recommendations earlier. So these are the we generally follow the American Cancer Society recommendations. So I've just summed up what you initially told. So self breast examination is advised for women for more than 20 years, and clinical breast examination, that is consulting a doctor. Any female between 20 to 39 years, if you consult once in 3 years, that is good. And women more than 40 years of age, would advise them to consult every yearly for clinical breast examination. And coming to the imaging, any female more than 40 years of age should undergo this annual breast imaging at least once in a year. So these are the recommendations which we would advise our participants. And Suresh Babu sir, do you think choice of imaging matters for the cases?
I think as of today, all over the world, mammogram is the choice of the imaging what we follow. But most of the radiologists, if they find something mammogramically something abnormal, I think they use ultrasound. Most of the centers, what they do is they combine both ultrasound and mammography together to do a screening nowadays. The other thing is about the people who have like genetic risk factors like BRCA and all. In them, doing mammography, exposing them to radiation frequently is not so advised. Even in the younger women who are with high risk of the developing breast cancer, in them we do more of ultrasound. If required, we will do a mammography in such cases. But all of the majority of the institutions all over the world do follow mammography. MRI is specifically limited for a very, very high risk group in a very, very specialized group. MRI is not routinely used as the screening test we do. If you have highly suspicion, something where you can't do mammography or mammography may not give so much of information, in such cases only we do MRI. Most of the centers do follow mammography with
Hello.
mammography to be used very cautiously. I
Yes.
think that is what the recommendation I would say.
So yes, sir. So as of now, what we are following is if the patient is very young and having a tiny breast, so in such cases we advise ultrasound. And in other females, elderly age group, we either ask for a combined mammogram along with an ultrasound. And in only specific cases, we are going for an MRI. And so what has led, if you see what has led for the breast cancer better outcomes, in the last few years, the treatment modalities have been better, improved a lot, and screening. So screening impacted a lot to detect cases far earlier. And if you detect the cases earlier, the lesser treatment modalities you need, because there are at least 5 to 6 modalities which we can treat breast cancer with. So if you are detected earlier, you need lesser treatment modalities, and it also lessens your financial burden for the patients, and we can achieve better results also. And Dr. Sandeep has highlighted you the symptoms for breast cancer earlier itself. So if you can see in the first images, that's how the lump in the breast looks and the lumps in the armpit looks. So you should look and feel for the lumps or any changes in the skin you see, and also specifically pointing out to your nipple areas if there is any retraction or if there is any scaling or ulcerations of your nipple. You have to look for that. And in the third picture, I've shown you discharge from the nipple. There are various kinds of discharges seen, like milk and greenish discharge, pus sometimes, and a bloody discharge. So whenever you have any kind of such problem or any skin changes, the first thing you have to do is consult a doctor immediately. That's very important. And Dr. Sandeep, I think we missed on this point. What are these lymph nodes in axilla? Most of the patients ask this question.
Yes, very commonly we get this question, because I see many patients who come to me with just lymph node in the armpit or lymph node in the neck. So they are scared that it is cancer. Now, lymph nodes are basically pumping stations. That's what is a simple explanation for them. They are pumping station for the fluid in your body. They just filter the body fluids and push it back into the blood. So when they're doing that, when their work has to increase, that is, if there is some infection or there is some any problem, their size also increases. So they filter out, just like your pumping station, water pumping station. If there are cancer cells which are moving towards them, they'll filter and they'll store it, just like your filter in the water filter. And that is why they are very important in cancer. But at the same time, they are functioning and they are doing their work, and they increase in size. So very commonly what happens is they would have shaved their arm, or they would have done some shaving the armpit, and next day or after a few days they start developing, or the lymph node starts enlarging, and it becomes painful, and they come running to the doctor. Nothing wrong with that, but the most common cause is that the lymph node is doing its work, and that is why it has enlarged.
So these lymph nodes are present all over the body, and they act like filters. Any kind of infection or cancer, they try to initially stop at their level itself. So that's what patients need to understand. And so I think we are having a lot of questions from the participants. Shall we go through the questions? We covered almost awareness and screening aspects, and I've given a gist of the symptoms also. So we'll just go through the questions.
Yes, I think it's a good.
Yeah. So I think we've covered most of the questions with here. Are you able to see the questions? Yeah. Male breast cancer. I have heard about male breast cancer. Does it happen only to obese people with fatty area? So we covered this. And if my mother goes to mammogram, what about COVID risk as hospital? Dr. Sandeep, can you answer?
See, as of now, COVID risk exists wherever you go. In fact, I feel it's not the hospitals which are more dangerous, it's the public spaces like banks and all, where I see patients blatantly violating the mask norms which are there. So any closed space is dangerous. In fact, in a hospital, your risk of getting in touch with another person is much lower, because the people who are there have knowledge about what they are doing. So it is reasonable to go for mammography now. It is not so dangerous. But yeah, you can take your caution, be cautious, and go to a good center, get it done. Nothing wrong with that.
Suresh Babu sir, one participant has asked, my mother is 68 years old. She may not understand self-breast examination. She feels uncomfortable to talk about it. How do I manage the situation?
I think I will suggest you take her to a doctor. Instead, before taking her to a doctor, you communicate to doctor and tell him that about your problem, how self-breast examination and other things. So she may not be comfortable in discussing with you, but she will be comfortable in talking to a doctor. Once a counseling with a doctor will explain them betterly how self-breast examination is being done. So, or you can find somebody in the family who is very comfortable, with whom she is very comfortable to communicate and all those things. You can use those ways rather than you talking to your mother. I take either help of the doctor, or you take help of some other member of the family with whom she is very comfortable. Through them, you can make her aware and do self-breast examination. Those things I think you can do.
One more participant has asked, I am 44 years old. I had my uterus and ovaries removed, and I am told that I don't have any risk of breast cancer now. Is it true? Dr. Sorry. Okay, sir, you can answer, sir. No problem.
Okay, if the ovaries are removed, then you have low risk of developing breast cancer, but it will not make you zero. There are many things in the breast cancer. See, for the breast cancer, there is something called as hormone positive and hormone negative. Removing of the uterus will give you protection if you are developing hormone positive breast cancer also. So removing ovaries in a person who has no any history of breast cancer of before, it may give some protection, but you are not completely out of breast cancer risk. I suggest you to follow the self-breast examination and other guidelines, whatever is being given for the screening, rather than thinking that you don't have any risk of breast cancer. Your risk may be less, but you are completely not out of risk.
So we have some interesting questions, so we'll extend the session and we'll at least some time. Is the likelihood of developing a cancer in big breast more than smaller breasts? Dr. Sandeep?
I didn't hear the question. Your voice didn't come through very well. What is it?
Is there a chance of developing breast cancer in big breast rather than a small breast?
Small breast.
Okay. See, the size of the breast has not been really been a criteria for development of breast cancer. So it is usually the obesity and the type of diet which has been linked to breast cancer, but not the size of the breast per se. If you want to say, extrapolate that to the size of breast, it is possible. Bigger obese person, bigger, larger the breast, but it doesn't work that way. So there is no direct connection between the size and this one at all. There's no link at all.
One more question is like, does smoking and alcohol really cause breast cancer? We can think it can cause lung cancer, but how does it affect the breast? I think I've answered this question in my session. So the moment you start taking more than, at least any female starts taking more alcohol, then it indirectly increases obesity and other damages, other immune responses in the body. So as you are obese, then the peripheral conversion of fat tissue into hormones will increase, and that indirectly relates to as a risk factor for the breast cancer.
Srikant, I'll just add to that.
Yes.
So the alcohol and breast cancer risk is somewhere established. Smoking, there is not clear data, but smoking also is known to increase. You don't the what you explained and whatever the theories are there, it's one of the theories. There can be many more scientific reasons which we don't know. But in epidemiological study, it is clearly established that consumption of alcohol do have some risk for the breast cancer that you must keep in mind. So smoking also carries some risk. So
Yes.
there cannot be mechanisms to explain everything. But in epidemiological studies, it is shown that consumption of alcohol can increase the breast cancer.
Yes, sir.
See, epidemiological for the benefit of public, that means, if you look at 1 lakh people, and in that 1 lakh people, if some percentage develops breast cancer, you are looking at what are the factors which involved in those people, what they were doing in comparison to those who did not do it. So when you compare the two, okay, these people had these many risk factors, they were involved in this. So that might be the cause of what they got. So basically, by comparing, you understand that okay, these people, might have got breast cancer because of what they did.
Yes, sir.
So that is how it is.
Okay. There was one more question regarding my cousin had breast cancer and she passed away. I have heard this is hereditary. Can I do something to prevent it? So we discussed the relations with genetics. So here you just mentioned your cousin, but you didn't tell how closely you are related, whether it is a first degree relative or a second degree relative. So it depends on that, and maybe if you consult a doctor, he can assess the risk properly, how closely you are related, and at what age your cousin had got the breast cancer. And depending on that, we can take a call whether you should go any test to undergo or not. And the other question, any specific things to eat like vitamin supplements? Sandeep sir, would you like to answer?
There is no specific things to be eaten to prevent any cancer or any disease. See, there are specific things not to be done, which we can tell you. So it is like, there are things like, smoking and alcohol, but to eat specifically, which will prevent it, no. So whatever diet should be is a healthy diet, which will be, having lot of greens. There are a lot of, proteins, vitamins, all those things do definitely help. And avoiding fried stuff, very oily stuff, and red meat, all these are the things which will really reduce the risk of all diseases. So, in fact, it's a generalized thing for everything. Whenever we talk about any cancer, it is a non-infectious disease. It's not infection. So all the non-infectious diseases have practically been boiled down to your lifestyle and what you eat and all this. So they can contribute, but they will never completely avoid. They will only contribute to what a general outcome. It is like, your car. If you a car or a vehicle, if you really manhandle that, it's going to give you a lot of troubles. So you should only look at handling your body like you handle your car. If you handle it well, it will last you longer. If you don't handle it very well, it will start giving you trouble very early. That's all it is. And as far as what is good diet, what is bad diet, everything has been explained in various ways. We have many blogs to explain. Everywhere there are a lot of articles to that. So it is very easy to follow. And also another thing is, sugar. refined sugars are very dangerous. They are equivalent to poison, with is slow poison literally. So
Yes.
these are things which have to be avoided.
And
Shrikant, I'll just add to that. So,
yes, sir.
if you see most of the literature in breast cancer regarding the diet, most of the centers suggest what is called as Mediterranean diet. As Sandeep was telling, there is no clear-cut association between them that what the Mediterranean diet do. Mediterranean diet usually consists of more of a green leafy vegetable, what Sandeep spoke. Other important component was cod liver oil. Third is the fish. So these are the three diets they suggest, but it doesn't mean that you eat that you will never get breast cancer also. So it's a healthy diet rather than keep. It's not about the diet itself. There are many more things, but this is the diet what most institutions do suggest in as far as the things. There is no anything to do with vitamins or anything.
And there were two questions related to Swati regarding exercises. I think you can follow Swati over Instagram, and she suggested Bombay runners. So maybe you can follow them for advice on workout and all. So the last question which was left was like the sexual activity or inactivity is related to anything with breast cancer. Would anyone like
There is
to
no
answer?
such data. Sexual activity is not related to breast cancer as such. There is no data available, and there is no reason to be associated with sexual activity as well. So, in fact, sexual activity is more related to cervical cancer, and that is related to the sexual hygiene more mainly. So, nothing to do with breast cancer. There is no relationship whatsoever.
Yes. So the last question, I think maybe like to point out, can pregnant females also get breast cancer? So it is possible, and mostly it will be detected in advanced stages because they won't do screening in those 2 years of pregnancy and all. And the other thing is diagnosis will be little delayed because even the patient and doctor won't suspect breast cancer. So it is possible to get breast cancer even in pregnant females. So it should be aware. If there is any small change also, you need to consult the doctor. So I think I covered most of the things and answered all the questions. Dr. Sandeep, would you like to add anything?
No, no, I don't think so. I think you have covered extensively, nicely done.
Yes. So I'll
Suresh,
end my
any other?
contribution. Anything, sir, Suresh Babu? Sir?
Nothing, nothing. I think we have covered extensively. I think we have
Yes.
overtook the time.
So the next session will be on. We just created awareness so far. So we have a very good panelist session for the next Sunday, and we have experts in genetics and various treatment modalities who will be participating in the next session. So I would advise all the participants to join us in the next week also. So I would hand over to Dr. Sandeep.
Yeah, so actually, thank you, Shrikant, and it is my duty to thank everyone who has participated today. And see, in fact, this program, when it was discussed a month back or so, in fact, it was discussed with me by Oncostem, Mr. Vishwanath from Oncostem, and we took it forward from there, and we developed a module, and we are here today discussing various aspects of prevention of breast cancer. So I thank Oncostem for being the main sponsoring company for this. Other side, we have the Book My Show, which actually was the were the home Zoom host for this, and they actually use that platform to promote this program. And very thank you, a lot of thanks to them for doing that. Apart from that, the entire panel of doctors who have participated here, and the like Dr. Shrikant, who was a moderator, Dr. Suresh Babu for participating, Dr. Arunima, and also very importantly Miss Swati for taking out time and being on the panel and participating throughout. I'm very thankful to you as well, and Meghna for giving her inputs. It was very useful for very important for people to understand the genetic aspects of the breast cancer. So thank you very much.
I would like to thank all the panel members, and Dr. Sandeep, thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity. And Dr. Suresh Babu sir, thank you. And Swati, you are an inspiration for all of us and keep spreading the awareness. And we also highlighted the importance of genetic counselor. I would also suggest that no genetic testing should be done without the help of a genetic counselor. It's very important to be counseled.
Correct.
Meghana, you participated well. Thanks a lot for that. And Dr. Arunima, your participation was very helpful for us. And maybe we'll do more tobacco cessation probably the next month. Thank you, everyone. Hope we join in this fight against breast cancer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.